The episode that could have ended Fred Rogers' career. The letter arrived at WQED Studios on a Monday morning in 1975. It was handwritten. In crayon. Pink crayon. The handwriting was careful, practiced. The kind of handwriting that comes from a child trying very hard to be neat. Dear Mr. Rogers, my name is Sarah. I am 7 years old. My mom and dad are getting a divorce. My teacher said it's because I was bad. Is that true? Did I make them not love each other anymore? I'm trying to be good. I promise. Can you help them love each other again? Please help. Sarah. Fred Rogers sat at his desk and read the letter 3 times. Then he put his head in his hands and cried, because he knew the truth. Sarah wasn't alone. Millions of children across America were living through their parents' divorces. And almost all of them believed the same thing Sarah believed. It was their fault. In 1975, divorce was becoming more common. The divorce rate in America had doubled in the previous decade. 1 in 3 marriages was ending in divorce. Millions of children were watching their families fall apart, but no one was talking to those children. No one was telling them the truth. No one was saying the words they desperately needed to hear. This is not your fault. Because in 1975, divorce was still a taboo. A shame, a failure, something you whispered about, something you hid. And talking about it on television, especially on a children's show, that was unthinkable. But Fred Rogers was about to do the unthinkable. He was going to create an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood about divorce. He was going to talk to children directly about what was happening in their homes. He was going to tell them the truth that no adult seemed willing to say. And when the network executives, the sponsors, the churches, and even some of his own staff found out what he was planning, they told him the same thing. If you do this, you will destroy your show. You will destroy your career. You will destroy everything you've built. But Fred Rogers looked at Sarah's letter, written in pink crayon, from a 7-year-old child who thought she destroyed her family, and he made his choice. Then I'll be destroyed. But I won't be silent. In 1975, divorce was everywhere. But no one would admit it. The statistics were staggering. Between 1965 and 1975, the divorce rate in the United States had more than doubled. By 1975, over 1 million couples were getting divorced every year. That meant millions of children were living through the trauma of watching their parents' marriages end. But in 1975, divorce was still considered a moral failure, a sin, a source of deep shame. Churches preached against it. Communities gossiped about it. Schools didn't know how to handle it. And television? Television pretended it didn't exist. In 1975, the most popular shows on TV were The Brady Bunch, The Waltons, and Happy Days. Perfect families. Happy families. Families that stayed together no matter what. The message was clear. Divorce was abnormal. Divorce was wrong. Divorce was something that happened to other people. Bad people. Weak people. Children living through divorce internalized this message. They felt like outcasts, like failures, like it was their fault, and the adults in their lives' parents, teachers, relatives, didn't know how to talk to them about it. So most adults just didn't. They stayed silent. They pretended everything was fine. They told children to be strong and don't worry, and everything will be okay. But children weren't stupid. They knew everything wasn't okay. They could feel the tension. They could see their parents fighting. They could sense the family falling apart. And in the absence of honest information, children filled in the blanks with their worst fears. Mom and Dad are getting divorced because I was bad. If I had been better, they would still love each other. This is my fault. Fred Rogers knew this. He'd been receiving letters from children of divorce for years. Hundreds of them, all saying the same thing in different words. Is this my fault? Can I fix it? Why don't they love each other anymore? Why don't they love me anymore? For years, Fred had responded to these letters individually, personally, telling each child the truth. This is not your fault. Your parents' decision to divorce has nothing to do with you. They both still love you. But individual letters weren't enough. Not when millions of children were suffering in silence. Fred Rogers knew he had to do something bigger. Something that would reach all those children at once. He had to make an episode about divorce. Asterisk, when Fred first mentioned the idea to his production team, the reaction was immediate and unanimous. No, absolutely not. His head writer, a woman named Betty Aberlin, who also played Lady Aberlin on the show, spoke first. Fred, we can't do an episode about divorce. It's too controversial, too divisive, too adult. Children are living through it, Fred said calmly. How is it too adult for them? Because their parents don't want us talking to their kids about divorce. That's a family matter, a private matter. It's only private if we pretend it doesn't exist, Fred replied. But it does exist, and children need help understanding it. Bob Troe, who played Bob Dog and multiple characters, jumped in. Fred, think about the backlash. The churches will come after us. The conservative groups will protest. Parents will pull their kids from watching the show. Some will, Fred agreed. But what about the children who need to hear this? What about Sarah? He held up the pink crayon letter. What about the millions of children who think their parents' divorce is their fault? Don't they deserve to hear the truth? The room was silent. Finally, the producer, a man named David Chun, said what everyone was thinking. Fred, this could end the show. The network will never approve it. The sponsors will pull their funding. We could lose everything. Fred looked around the room at his team. People he'd worked with for years. People who believed in the mission of the show. People who cared about children. I know, he said quietly, but I can't stay silent. Not about this. Asterisk Fred Rogers spent 2 weeks writing the divorce episode. He didn't want to be preachy. He didn't want to take sides. He didn't want to tell children that divorce was good or bad. He just wanted to tell them the truth. It's not your fault. Your parents still love you. Your feelings are valid. It's okay to be sad, angry, confused, or scared. Fred decided to approach the topic through the neighborhood of make-believe. He would use his puppets, Daniel Tiger, King Friday, Lady Elaine, to act out a story where 2 characters were getting divorced. And then Fred himself, in the real neighborhood, would talk directly to children about what they'd just seen. He would answer the questions children were too afraid to ask. When Fred presented his script to the network, the response was swift and hostile. No. Excuse me? Fred said. The network executive, a man named Richard Patterson, looked at Fred with something between pity and frustration. Fred, we appreciate what you're trying to do. We really do. But we cannot air an episode about divorce. It's too controversial. Controversial for whom? For everyone. Parents, churches, community groups, our sponsors. But not controversial for the children living through it. Patterson sighed. Fred, we have advertisers to think about. We have affiliate stations in conservative markets. We have a responsibility to children. For children, Fred interrupted. We have a responsibility to children. That's our only responsibility. That's naive. That's the truth. Patterson leaned forward. Fred, let me be very clear. If you make this episode, we will not air it. And if you insist on making it anyway, we will have to seriously reconsider our relationship with Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Fred was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, So you're threatening to cancel the show if I talk about divorce? We're telling you that there are consequences to controversial content. Controversial, Fred repeated. Millions of children are living through divorce. Their families are falling apart. They think it's their fault. And you're telling me that helping them is controversial? Yes, because half the country still believes divorce is morally wrong. And we can't afford to alienate half our audience. Fred stood up. Then, you don't understand what this show is about. It's not about keeping audiences. It's not about keeping sponsors. It's about helping children. All children. Even the ones going through things that make adults uncomfortable. Fred, I'm making the episode, Fred said. Whether you air it or not. Word spread quickly that Fred was making a divorce episode. The backlash started before the episode was even filmed. Churches organized letter-writing campaigns. Mr. Rogers is promoting the breakdown of the American family. Conservative family groups protested outside WQED Studios. Divorce is a sin. Don't teach it to our children. Even some of Fred's colleagues urged him to reconsider. One afternoon, Franco Clemens' officer, Clemens on the show, came to Fred's office. Fred, I need to talk to you about this divorce episode. I'm listening. Franco sat down. I support what you're trying to do. I really do, but, Fred, this is different from the pool. This is different from talking about assassination. This is attacking the institution of marriage. People are going to see it that way. I'm not attacking marriage, Fred said calmly. I'm supporting children. I know that. You know that. But the churches don't see it that way. They think you're saying divorce is okay. I'm not saying it's okay or not okay. I'm just saying it happens. And when it does, children need to know it's not their fault. But Fred, if we lose the show, if this episode gets us canceled, then we can't help any children. Isn't it better to stay on the air and help the children we can help? Fred looked at Francois for a long moment. Then he said something that Francois would never forget. If we only help the children who are easy to help, if we only talk about the topics that don't make people uncomfortable, then what are we really doing? We're not helping children. We're making adults feel better. And that's not what this show is for. Francois nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry I doubted you. You didn't doubt me. You were being practical. But sometimes the right thing isn't practical. The sponsors were next. One by one, they called the network. And one by one, they delivered the same message. If Fred Rogers airs that divorce episode, we're pulling our funding. The pressure on WQED was enormous. The station relied on sponsor funding to stay operational. Losing even one major sponsor would be devastating. Losing multiple sponsors could shut down the station entirely. The station manager called Fred into his office. Fred, we need to talk about the money. I figured. We've lost 3 sponsors already. Just from the rumor that you're making this episode. If we actually air it, we could lose half our funding. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you do. We're not talking about a budget cut. We're talking about potentially shutting down this station. Ending Mr. Rogers' neighborhood permanently. Is that really what you want? Of course not. But I can't let sponsors dictate what I can and can't say to children. Fred, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. What's unreasonable is expecting me to ignore millions of children who are suffering because it might make some advertisers uncomfortable. The station manager rubbed his temples. What do you want me to tell the board? Tell them I'm making the episode, and they can decide whether to air it or not. But I'm making it. Filming began on a cold October morning in 1975. The crew was tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. Fred walked onto the set wearing his cardigan. He sat in his chair, and he looked directly into the camera. This was the moment everything could fall apart. But Fred Rogers didn't hestate. Asterisk. Hello. Neighbor. Today, I want to talk to you about something that might be happening in your family, or in a friend's family, or in a family. Sometimes when two grown-ups are married, they decide they don't want to be married anymore, and they get what's called a divorce. That's a very big word, divorce, and it can be a very scary thing for children to hear about. Some of you might be living in a family where your mom and dad are getting a divorce, or maybe they're already divorced. And I want you to know something very important. It is not your fault. Sometimes children think that if they had been better, if they had been quieter, or cleaner, or nicer, then their parents wouldn't be getting divorced. But that's not true. When grown-ups decide to get divorced, it's because of grown-up reasons. It has nothing to do with you. Your parents still love you, both of them, even if they don't love each other anymore. And that's okay, because you can still love someone even if you don't want to live with them anymore. You might feel sad about the divorce, or angry, or confused. And all of those feelings are okay. It's okay to feel however you feel. You might worry about where you're going to live, or when you're going to see your mom or dad, or whether things will ever feel normal again. Those are all normal things to worry about. And it's okay to talk to the grown-ups in your life about those worries. Divorce is hard. It's hard for everyone. But you are not alone. And it is not your fault. You are loved. By your mom. By your dad. By the people who care about you. And nothing not divorce. Not anything can change that, Thank you for listening, neighbor. I'm very proud of you. The episode ended. Fred sat in his chair for a long moment after the cameras stopped rolling. The crew was silent. Some were crying. Finally, Betty Aberlin walked over and hugged Fred. "That was perfect," she whispered. "I hope it helps," Fred said. The episode was finished. But the battle was just beginning. The network refused to air it. "It's too controversial," they said again. "We can't risk it." Fred appealed to PBS headquarters. They also refused. "We support your mission, Fred, but we can't force affiliate stations to air content they don't want to air. And we've already received calls from dozens of stations saying they'll refuse to broadcast this episode." "Then we've failed," Fred said quietly. "No, Fred, we've been practical. Being practical doesn't help the children who need this." For 3 months, the divorce episode sat in a vault at WQED, filmed, edited, complete. But unseen. Fred went back to making regular episodes. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd abandoned Sarah, abandoned all the children like her. And then something unexpected happened. In January 1976, a small public television station in Massachusetts, WGBH Boston, made an announcement. They were going to air the divorce episode. Against network recommendations, against sponsor pressure, against the warnings of conservative groups, they were going to air it. The station manager, a woman named Susan Lynn, called Fred personally. "We believe in what you're doing, and we're going to show your episode." Whatever the consequences, Fred was speechless. "But, Susan, you could lose funding. You could face protests. Why would you take that risk?" "Because it's the right thing to do. And because children in Boston are going through divorce just like children everywhere else. They deserve to hear what you have to say." The divorce episode aired on WGBH Boston on January 24, 1976. And within 24 hours, everything changed. The phone lines at WGBH were flooded, but not with angry parents, with grateful ones. "Thank you for airing that episode. My daughter has been blaming herself for our divorce. After watching Mr. Rogers, she finally understands it's not her fault. My son has been so angry since his father left. Last night, after your show, he cried for the first time. He finally felt like someone understood. I'm a teacher. I have 3 students whose parents are divorcing. I didn't know what to say to them. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. The letters came next. Thousands of them. From parents, teachers, counselors, and children. From Sarah, the girl who wrote the pink crayon letter. Dear Mr. Rogers, I saw your show about divorce. My mom recorded it for me because we don't live in Boston, but my aunt does, and she sent us the tape. You said it's not my fault. My mom said the same thing, but I didn't believe her. But I believe you. Thank you. Sarah, more stations started calling. Can we air the divorce episode too? Within 2 months, over 50 PBS stations had aired the episode. By the end of 1976, the divorce episode had been broadcast in almost every major market in the United States. The backlash Fred had feared did happen. Churches protested. Conservative groups organized boycotts. Some sponsors did pull their funding, but for every sponsor that left, 2 more arrived. Because parents were grateful. Teachers were grateful. Children were grateful, and the letters kept coming. 10,000 letters. Then 20,000. All saying the same thing. Thank you for telling us the truth. Thank you for saying it's not our fault. Thank you for seeing us. * years later. In 1999, Fred Rogers was interviewed about the divorce episode. Do you regret making it? The interviewer asked. Given all the controversy it caused. Fred smiled. No, not for a second. But you almost lost the show. Almost. But I didn't. Because there were enough people who believed that children deserve honesty. Even about hard topics. What would you say to the people who criticized you? The ones who said you were promoting divorce? Fred was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I would say that acknowledging reality isn't the same as promoting it. Divorce was happening. Millions of children were living through it. And they were suffering in silence because no adult would talk to them about it. I didn't create divorce. I didn't encourage it. I just told children the truth they desperately needed to hear. It's not your fault, and if telling children the truth makes some adults uncomfortable, well, I think that says more about the adults than about the truth. The divorce episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood never won an Emmy. It was never nominated for any awards. It was controversial for years, but it changed countless lives. Sarah, the girl with the pink crayon letter, grew up. She became a family therapist, specializing in helping children through divorce. In 2003, when Fred Rogers died, Sarah wrote an essay about him. I was 7 years old when my parents got divorced. I thought it was my fault. I thought if I had been a better daughter, they would have stayed together. And then I saw an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And Fred Rogers looked at me through the TV screen and said, It's not your fault. Those 4 words changed my life. I spent my childhood thinking I was broken, that I had destroyed my family. And then Fred Rogers told me the truth. I was just a child. And I was loved. I became a therapist because of that episode. Because I wanted to help other children the way Fred Rogers helped me. He didn't just make a TV show. He saved lives. He saved mine. Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for being brave enough to tell the truth when no one else would. The legacy of the divorce episode extends far beyond that single broadcast. It proves something that Fred Rogers had believed his entire career. Children can handle the truth. What they can't handle is being lied to, or ignored, or made to feel invisible. The divorce episode opened the door for other difficult topics. In the years that followed, Fred Rogers made episodes about death, war, disability, racism, anger, fear. Every single time, people told him it was too controversial, too difficult, too risky. And every single time, Fred Rogers made the episode anyway, because he understood something that most adults didn't. Silence doesn't protect children. Honesty does. On February 27, 2003, Fred Rogers died. Among the thousands of tributes and remembrances, One stood out. It was from a woman named Sarah Thompson. She was 35 years old, a family therapist, a mother of two. She sent a letter to the Fred Rogers Center. Dear friends of Fred Rogers, I'm writing to tell you about a little girl with a pink crayon in 1975. That little girl thought she had destroyed her family. She thought her parents' divorce was her fault. She carried that guilt and that shame every single day. And then she saw an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And Fred Rogers told her the truth. And that truth set her free. That little girl grew up. She became a therapist. She got married. She had children. And she spent her entire career helping other children going through what she went through. All because one man was brave enough to tell the truth. When everyone else stayed silent, Fred Rogers changed my life. He saved my life, and I'm just one person. There are millions of others. Millions of children who heard his words and felt seen, felt understood, felt loved. Thank you for everything Fred Rogers gave to the world. Thank you for supporting him when he made the hard choices. Thank you for letting him be honest with us. I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor his legacy. With gratitude and love. Sarah.